Start at our normal time of 11:10. This just isn't enough time between the end of the service and when we're starting Sunday school if we're going to have folks here, because we get to love each other for a few minutes and talk and get caught up, and it turns into a rush. So next Sunday, we'll put this in the weekly memo, I hope to remember this, Sunday school will be at 11:10. So that just gives us a little bit more time to get things set up and that type of thing. So what we're doing today is Dalton and Dothan. I like the name because I like to alliterate things. So that's how that name came about. But just for those, if you're not as familiar, this year would have been the 10th year that we've taken a team to Dalton, Georgia. We work with Grace Presbyterian Church. They have a Hispanic outreach. And so we will, in the evenings up there, we do a backyard Bible club, and we go to a neighborhood and one of their church members' homes, neighborhoods. We try to gather children to come and to tell them about Jesus and make a connection. That's the big thing. We're there to make the connection with people who maybe are not connected to the church, and to encourage those who are. So that's that part of the role. But that's just in the evenings. That takes place after a very long day of working with Jim Boyd and Rebuilding Hope Ministries. Well, I think one of the more thoughtful, well-organized ministries when it comes to helping those who need help. And so I would commend you to it if you're not from Westwood and you happen to see this and you're looking for something from a missional standpoint where you can send anybody to go pretty much, as long as they're age 12 and older. It doesn't cost a lot of money. The travel expenses are lower. You get some cross-cultural experience in the midst of it all. So just a lot of pluses to going there. And you get to do meaningful help as you help people. So you can check a lot of blocks by going and participating in that. So that's why we've done this. Some people say, why do you do the same trip every year? Because it's not the same trip every year. It's a different group of people, different group dynamics. You're helping different people, and you're reaching out to different people in different neighborhoods. So it's the same general location, but it's never the same trip. So we were disappointed this year when we couldn't go because of just the way things were working. And so we said, let's do Dalton and Dothan. And so we did. And we're hoping that this can become, as it were, a trend. You know what it's like in a church? You do something once, and then you end up doing it for the next 100 years. So, but this is one of those good things that we've done. And we've done it more than once, actually. But to be very intentional about it, what was, as it were, different about doing it here because of the virus and all, we're not able to have the group dynamic that we typically would have in Dalton. We had about 20 different people participate in different locations, and that was enjoyable, but there was no point we could all be together as we would have in Dalton for breakfast and then for dinner. And then for the Backyard Bible Club, and then together in the bunkhouse, lots of opportunities that we were together. And really by the end of the week, it's just a wonderful dynamic. So hoping next year works. We're going to plan, if we can, to go early next year. Early would be as early as we can go in June, because then that'll give us enough of a break to do Dalton and Dothan in Dothan, and be able to really reach out and support some in our own church in ways that we were able to this year. And so that's the goal. And if we do this well, and we will pray about this, and I trust that God can open up perhaps even an opportunity for us to do backyard Bible clubs in Dothan as well as we would do in Dalton. So Dalton can go be our dry run, our test run for what we could come back and do in Dothan. It's a great opportunity just to reach out to folks. So that's the big picture plan on that type of activity. So what we did this year, we had some different locations. We didn't get everything done we wanted to get done. I was going to say, for the first time in my life, I underestimated how long a project would take. Yeah. Yeah. I can say it. That's right. That is not true. That is not true. It was not a true statement, is it? Right? My boys in particular know that. But we went to some different locations, and we'll as we go through, we'll kind of talk about those. And so I just wanted to go through the slides and to talk about the different locations, so you can get a sense of what those who had the opportunity then to do this week. And so If we can go to the first slide, I don't know which slide is up, if they're seeing Dalton and Dothan. So we got to alliterate these, okay? So we started with painting on Park. So this house is on Park Avenue, and this is where Ellen Davis lives. She needed some help. If we had done a few more of the before pictures before they just went in there and they were on it so fast, we didn't get some of those. A fair amount of shrubbery that needed to be removed on the back side of the house. So this is the front. On the back side of the house to the right, there was a lot of shrubbery to be removed. And the main painting took place, if you're looking at this picture, on the side you can't see to the right and on the back side. And so that's really where most of the work took place. And so you can go to the next slide. You'll see that's a picture of kind of one of the back corners. And you may or may not be able to see it that clearly, but it needs a little bit of paint, and so they got to work painting it. So the next slide. And they put Rich Freeman to work back there. Now, at that particular location, I think it was Rich and Linda Garrett. You guys helped me out. I think Don Donnelly was able to go some. Lynn Miley, Jay Phillips, and that was that location, right? So those 5 who were able to be there. And here's the nice thing about doing something like that in Dothan. You don't have to go every day. Maybe you can go Monday and a Thursday like Jay could, or maybe you could go a couple of days but not later. So that's the nice thing about doing this here. So they began painting there. And next slide, please. There's a kind of another picture on the back side where they were going to be working, and so they got to work on that. So the next slide. I think that's, you may not can see Lynn, he's kind of in the shadows, but I think that's Lynn up on a ladder. And next slide, please. And I think that's, is that Jay and Lynn up on the ladder? I believe that is. And then Rich is there in the corner painting, and they're getting up on the eaves. But the next picture is a better picture, I think, of those guys. There you go. Better picture. That's from the inside as they were working on the ladder. Next slide, please. Linda, I think, took our pictures. So most of our pictures, so she was only in, I think, this one. So even though you may not have wanted this picture, Linda, I wanted to picture you in there.
The one I really wanted was Lynn with the dot of red, white paint on his
Yeah.
face, but we didn't get that. But you could tell that I was swimming in the paint.
You guys were paint. It looks like you were painting properly in that one. And like you said, if we could have just gotten the picture of Lynn with a dot with a little paint on his nose, that would have been good. It'd have been really good if it had been a big red dot. We could call him Rudolph. But all right, next slide. So again, back side, this is where they were painted, and I'm not sure if that was before or an after. But what you can't see in that picture is all of the debris that in the brown area that they cleaned out. So that was very helpful. Okay, the next picture. All right, next picture, please. And I think that's after they painted. You really tell it really looks good. They did a great job. Next picture, please. Again, what you would not have been able to see the house very well. The brown area, there was a great deal of shrubbery that had grown up, as shrubbery has a tendency to do, and some of the shrubbery next to the house. And that's what they did on Monday. They spent a lot of time on Monday doing that type of shrubbery removal and then the painting. So the next slide gives you a different angle, more from the back of the house. Again, a lot of, I know because I went by the house, I'm just picturing all the shrubbery I saw that was kind of undergrowth that needed to be trimmed. They did, but great job, guys, on that. Next slide, please. And there's now curbside, looks great. They did a super job doing that, and I think they worked Monday through Thursday, and then I think a little. Do y'all need to go back on Friday morning and do a little bit?
I was there for an hour Friday.
Maybe an hour Friday morning. So you guys got a lot of work done throughout the week. So thank you very much. Ellen's ecstatic, and that was great. So then we move on to the next location, I believe. Yeah, we're going to do repairs on Rosebud, right? And this is I didn't get a picture of the whole house. This is the obviously the garage, and I took that picture because we were going to drive around on the right side of the house and bring supplies to the back of the house. This is Mary Arias's home, and just again, again, undergrowth, things start growing, and they keep growing, And a hurricane a year and a half, 2 years ago blew down a large section of her fence on the back. And part of the concern there, even though this is in Dothan, Alabama, and kind of near the mall, there are coyotes, even that will make their way into this part of our town. And one of the neighbors had their dog killed by coyotes, and so she has a dog, and the back of her property is up against a large wooded area, and so there's of course the concern of that. And so if we go to the next slide, this is moving into the backyard. You can see the undergrowth on the right side of the picture, and then way to the back. And let's get closer to the back with the next picture, if you would. So that's the back corner, and that goes into a wooded lot, and that's where the fencing was down. And so this was the area, the main area of concern we wanted to address was there. Next picture, please. So that's from her backyard looking back toward the fence. You can see the section of the fencing that's down, and then the supplies that are in her yard. Before that, next slide, please. So team got to work on Monday doing the cleaning off of the fence row on the back, and there was a lot to clean, and they did a lot of really good work. Next slide, please. Again, that's just that. What you see is underbrush that's been cut down, and it's getting ready to be cut into smaller portions and taken to the front. But on the other side of that, what you can't see, you can see in this next picture, Catherine against the fence. You can kind of barely see her, and she came across some poison ivy. Was it like that big around? The poison ivy, not quite that big. It was some of the biggest poison ivy. Okay, it was like that though, right? It was really big poison ivy vines that were back in there. Thankfully, no one had a reaction to it. No one got into it, but a lot of very good and diligent kind of secondary cleaning taking place in that area. So next slide, please. So that's with the area we're just looking at. A lot of the debris has been removed and taken down to the street. Next slide, please. And so there they are taking the debris down to the street. This is on Monday. This is Monday morning. They're taking that down. Next slide, please. This is Tuesday afternoon. Okay, I don't know if you can kind of get if you go back a frame, please. All right, so that's their starting. You kind of get a sense. Now go back to, here's Tuesday afternoon. That Calvin's in the back of the picture to give you a little bit of perspective on the size of that. So they were quite proud, which they should have been, of the work they were able to get done in cutting and cleaning along the back. So next slide, please. Wait a minute. I see that hand. Yeah, so if Calvin with a hat on and shoes, go back. I had a question. How tall is he for perspective? With shoes and that hat on, over 6.5 feet. So you're looking at at least 8 feet of debris, and it's pretty deep. So, all right. Next slide, please. So getting to work on the fence on the back always takes adult supervision, and so appreciate that. Here's the thing we underestimated, believe it or not. There was a lot of concrete from the old fence and from some other places there, and the roots were like, I mean, we should have anticipated the roots. It was got painful in a few places. All right, next slide, please. So again, a good adult supervision. Watching DJ try to get it right there, but I'm sorry, Sergio, not DJ. Working on this is the back of the fence, trying to get that done. Next slide, please. And that's the finished product when the fence was up. About 70 feet along the back of the fencing is what had blown down. And that debris is at the street and all the other debris. So next slide, please. That's now you're going, again, if you could remember going into the backyard, now that's the new picture going into it. Next slide, please. Going around the side of the house. What you really wouldn't be able to see in this is at the top, all of those limbs that are right near the house, a great number had grown kind of into the roof line, but those were trimmed as well. But also on the other side of the house, there was some work to be done, so we can go to that side. This is the other side of the house where there's a gate, and also some of the fencing there. The posts had rotted at the base, and so the posts were not stable. And we replaced some of the posts. Let me go to the next slide, please. So we just took the fencing down, replaced some of the posts. Next slide. That's a different section where we needed to replace, again, some posts and some of the part of the fencing. Next slide. I don't know if you can quite tell, but this is that entire stretch. There were two sections, around probably 30 more feet total that needed to be replacing as well. All right, next picture. Again, another picture of that. And next picture is going to, I think, next picture, please. Now we're at the church, right? Now we're playing on the playground, all right? Now, the people who were there may disagree with my description, but Jim may disagree, all right? But let's go to the next slide. And there's our playground. And if you haven't gone back, if you haven't had an opportunity to look at the playground before they did their work, you really can't appreciate what all they did. Not only was there a lot of cleaning that needed to be done, but a number of the rails were broken. Some of the boards had kind of warped. If you put your hand on the top railing in a lot of places, because of the aging of the boards, a lot of splinters. And if you go out there now, you can rub your hand down the top rails of 2x4s. It's amazing. The way they filled in the gaps, the way they smoothed it down, the way they painted it. The flooring, again, they just did from replacing some of the few boards that were rotten on the underneath side of the playground. In the forefront of that picture to the left is a little garden area that a homeschool group had planted that uses our school. And it had not had any attention in a long time. And they cleaned that out. And there was enough debris just from there and from some of the limbs they cut hanging over the playground to completely fill up half of a large trailer. Well, you'll see that in a few moments. But anyway, just want to give you a bit of the scope of the work that they did. So next slide, please. So a little painting of the swings. That's Chuck Riley and Jim were painting there on that particular day. Next slide, please. Now, if you're familiar with our playground, you'll notice something different, and that is a gate at the top of that little rock step. And there's also another gate at the top of the rope climb, and it has a latch like a screen door, so when you go through it, it will close by itself. And it's just an added safety feature that they added. They built the gate, or actually Robin, I think, built the gates for us, and really appreciate that, and installed them. So that was really a nice addition to our playground. Next slide, please. Again, just a kind of a picture of it. You can see the ladder where they've been climbing on things. I think you got Chuck pressure washing there in the forefront. Next picture. Diane is working on something. I'm not sure what, but she and my mom are the ones who primarily did the area where the gardening was. Really, go to the playground. It's really a nice area to go and to not just to play on, but it's particularly the garden area cleaned up. It's very pretty. Next picture, please. All right, so they were playing on the playground while some were working at Westwood. How's that? All right, next picture. All right, now what you can't see in that picture is a lonely figure at the very back, because the first thing we really needed to do was cut the entire back lot with a walk-behind bush hog. It took 2 full days, but it got done, and so the back area has been completely cut. Next slide, please. But here's some young men loading up all the debris that came out of the playground, and that's a 5x10 trailer with seats on the sides that are, maybe 3 feet tall. And it filled it up. It was amazing how much they were able to get off the playground. Next slide, please. And so they went off all of the back of the property, and they picked up almost all of the sticks and the different debris. It took 4 trips to the dump with that large trailer to be able to get that. There's still a large pile of debris, and there's still some sticks left, and a few other things need to be trimmed. So we need to do this again. All right, next slide, please. And they made it pretty much to the back of the property. Next slide, please. So That was all we got done last week, but we had mentioned to a couple of other people that we were going to try to get to theirs. And so actually, it was not during Dalton and Dothan week, but it was just last week. A couple of young men from our church was able to go to Carolyn Winges while they were on a trip out of town and do some work there. And so next slide, please. And so trimming clipping, that's where we got our little title on the front of the house. Micah took care of the front for us. We can go to the next slide, please. As he clips away there. Next slide. And then in the back, a lot of that took place. Levi and Dan helping back there. Again, just as things grow, healthy things normally grow. And so a lot of those things, I don't know if you look back in kind of the back left corner, there were a number of trees that were growing kind of, but leaning over into her neighbor's yard. And we were concerned if they kept growing, then they'd be really hard to cut down in the future. So if you go to the next slide, we cut some of those trees down as well as some limbs, and they got a pretty sizable pile. About half again as big as that pile was removed by the city, and then so you didn't get to see it being bigger. Next slide, please. But back in that corner, we were able to get rid of some of those trees that were back there that were going to become a problem if they got larger. Next slide, please. This is another kind of corner of the house where they were able to do a lot of clipping, and I think one more picture, I believe. Again, just across the backyard into an area where she has one of the largest lemon trees I've ever seen. You can't see it in the picture because the lemons are still green, but it's huge. It's loaded. So I'm like, wow, that's pretty cool. All right, was that the last picture? Yeah. Thank you to everyone. Think about this. When you reach out and try to help folks, there are lots of opportunities for things to go wrong. Lots of opportunities for someone to get tired and to not be thinking and to get cut or have something fall. And so people were praying for us, and we really appreciate that. Some of you made it possible for other people to go, right? Some folks watched kids, or some folks took on extra work, so a spouse or children or someone could be free to come and spend some of their time and to be helpful. And then there were those who had fit their schedule and they were able to come to work and to help out. And so it truly is a team effort when you do something like this. And so we really appreciate Team Westwood doing Dalton and Dothan and trying to love those who are in our church and encourage them in these very practical ways. So we have a couple of things left to do. Hopefully this Wednesday, if the weather is good, we'll do a little work. I'll call it a work morning, but you know how those grow. And try to get the rest of that, little bit of that debris at the back of the property done, and maybe some other things clipped and put in the trailer and hauled off. We could probably do 2 or 3 loads on Wednesday if folks are available. But that'd be this Wednesday morning. I can pick a trailer up around 7. We could say 8 to lunch, and we can try to feed you lunch if you're available. And the weather's not rainy. Anybody have any comments that you guys wanted to make or questions about what we accomplished or tried to accomplish this last week? Linda?
I have a couple of questions. Have you considered do Dalton and Dothan as a year-round thing rather than just a one-time? I mean, from the look of what, I mean, we didn't even touch Josie's place, right?
Right.
And you're still working on some of these projects. And even if we moved outside of the church, there are people in the community, little ladies that need help planting their plants in the spring, or need their shutters painted, or, I mean, this could actually be a do Dalton and Dothan, a year-round thing, and still go to Dalton in
Right.
June.
Okay, let me tell if anybody's watching, they can't hear you. So her question is this something that we could do more than just that 1 week that we would do? Could it be something done year-round? And the answer is yes. In that way, you would target specific things. The value, I would say you do both. I would say you go to Dalton, you do a Dalton and Dothan, and then you do other things as well, and here's why. Because when you do something over the summer, now this year was unusual because we couldn't be together corporately. but that's your best shot to get the most number of people together corporately and build those relationships in that way. And so you get there's a dynamic of doing it kind of large scale, if you will, with 3 or 4 large projects, if you can do that type of thing here. And so then out of that, in fact, we plan on finishing up. We didn't get to Josie's. We'll try to take care of that in the next week or so as well. But it's this type of thing, you could say, hey, you kind of come across something and you find some folks and you do that type of thing as well. So it doesn't have to be limited. I would say that what we do, I think, would be in addition to hopefully going to Dalton, because again, that's a completely different dynamic when you go away. It's a completely different dynamic when it's large scale here, and then you have a different dynamic when it's smaller scale throughout the year. So there's no reason we couldn't do each of those things throughout the year.
And then my other question is, how much cost was incurred? I mean, was there more cost involved than you originally anticipated? Or at Ellen's house, she had paint, so there really was nothing other than blood, sweat, and tears.
Right. So, yeah, so the question is a question of cost. What was the cost? The cost was covered. There was a cost when we were putting up a fence or doing those types of things. We actually had to rent a piece of equipment to do some work on the back, rent a trailer. So we ended up incurring total with all of those types of different costs that we had for the project about $2,000. All of that was covered by donations, though it didn't come out of the general fund. Actually, there were a couple of donations that were made because people wanted that to be something that wasn't an issue. But in the future, we would anticipate if we do something like that in the future, you could be looking at $1,000 to $2,000. That would be something we could just anticipate having a need for that type of thing, so we can do that. Good question. Mary?
There was one little extra cost that was incurred from this whole thing. The reaction to poison ivy didn't show up for a few days.
The what?
The reaction to the poison ivy didn't show up for a few days.
Oh, there was some reaction to some poison ivy. Oh, and it didn't show up for a few days. Oh, sorry.
I'm sure Jesus had allergies too.
That's right. part of living in a fallen world. So there was a little bit of from the poison ivy, but not devastating or hopefully long term. I hope. Okay. All right. You have questions about that? Comments?
We'll get a supply of Techno in before we do this again.
Pardon?
In Techno, you can wash off within 8 hours and it'll keep it from developing into.
Oh, so there's a wash for poison ivy, is what you're saying? Okay. Neat. All right. Well, let me just transition for a couple of minutes and just say a few things about a website, okay? Something that's been being worked on kind of behind the scenes, if you will, has been really updating a website. When we first developed our website, we really developed it with you in mind, right? A lot of information, a lot of touch points there for us, and not so much for the person who's saying, hey, is there a PCA church in the area? And they type in PCA and find it and get some more basic information out. And because of the way we had originally designed it, it was fairly labor intensive as well as far as maintaining it. So what we've worked on is really a completely different look for a website that has in its target audience, not you, but for the person who may be looking to say, is there a place I can go and worship? And I hope by the end of this week, that'll be ready to go live. We'll send you out an email with that. So when you go to our website, which is westwoodpca.org, and you look at it and it's different, then you'll go, oh, this is what David was talking about. And so I just want you to be aware of that. So if you go to watch the sermon by going to our website, and right there on the front page right now, there's a button that you click. What there should be on the new website, and we'll confirm this, is that you go to the website, and at the top it says sermons. So you click on the sermon page, and there should be a link right there that says to watch today's sermon, please click here. Okay, so a little bit of a change on that. It'll be much easier for us to maintain. We can keep it current, and I want you to be aware that that's a change. We're still working on some things that will be connected to that web page that you may be used to from the old website. So it's not going to have some of the bells and whistles that you're used to as far as things you can access, like a directory or like a calendar. Those are some things that are going to be some of the follow-ons that I think we're able to develop and add to it. At least a calendar, not sure about the directory aspect, but just wanted to be aware. I wanted to be aware why this was being done. This is being done in order to have a website that hits more of the target audience that we're looking for, which are one of those who don't come to Westwood, and those in particular who would be more in their 30s and 40s kind of thing. So, do you have any questions about that, Donna?
Will there be certain aspects of the website that will be password protected?
At this point, we don't have any aspects of it that are password protected, and so that's what, again, we wanted to get it published, even though there may be some things in the future we may develop like that. So the answer to the question at this point, no. But once we get it up, then that'll give us some time over the next probably month or two to say, hey, what are the things we really miss? And what should we add back into this one? Because here's what you have to understand. Everything we do that with, somebody has to maintain, right? And so you're welcome to volunteer to do that. It's really okay. But it takes someone to do that type of thing. So that's one of the reasons, in my mind, I wanted to simplify and scale down a little bit and also hit more of the target audience that we wanted to with that. Good question, Don. Any other? All righty. God is good all the time. And all the time, God is good. Let's pray together. Father, we rejoice in your goodness. We thank you for the way you love us. And Father, you give us the opportunity to have lots of good experiences in worship, in learning, in serving. You allow us to be able to have a website and to communicate and to be able to be in touch with people in ways that are just not possible in some parts of the world. Will you please help us to use these tools for what you would design them for, that we might be connected in ways that help us love you and love one another and be about the business of your kingdom. Father, you have amazing children. I thank you for the ones you've gathered at Westwood. I thank you for the opportunity to serve together in gospel ministry. Send us now into this week to do your will. We ask in Christ's name. Amen. All right. Thank you. You're dismissed.